You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit
A
strange?
very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
I just found out that over the course of the last 90 days, more than 60% of the people who view my videos are not subscribed. If you appreciate the danger that is being faced by our country right now, the danger that our country is facing, how about that? And you appreciate independent media and what we do in this current political climate, please subscribe. It's free. Click the subscribe button and you'll be notified when I upload new content. I would appreciate it very much. Very important on multiple fronts. I would appreciate it. Let's talk about something that took place yesterday in the Senate Judiciary Committee with Josh Hawley. It was a real ass pounding, not that kind of ass. I know what you think about Josh Hawley. I know him and his little tiny, too tight t-shirts and looking at the pictures of him looking like he's just disgusted when he kisses his wife. I know what you're thinking. Not that kind of ass pounding. This time it came from Kate Shaw, a law professor from the University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League law professor who just rammed it in there. Again, I'm not talking about that. He's a mighty alpha male, masculine. He's not some little soy boy. No, come on now. Anyway, Josh Hawley is a guy who he's like a more likable Ted Cruz. I'm not saying he's likable. I'm saying he's more likable than Ted Cruz. And yesterday, this exchange that took place between he and Professor Kate Shaw, a constitutional law scholar and professor, was remarkable. Because what MAGA would have you believe is that everything that happens to Donald Trump is out of his control. It's being done to him and not because of the things he does. This was on display during all of his court cases and the felonies that committed, the guilty verdict against him with 34 felony counts. It was on display during his having absconded with national security secrets and the mishandling of highly sensitive classified documents, military and otherwise. It was the fraud cases and the election fraud case, just all of it. Donald Trump acts like it's happening to him, and he had no role to play whatsoever. The same thing's happening right now while he's president of the United States, as injunctions are being placed against him, courts are ruling against him, 181 court cases in the last 3 months, 181 rulings against him, telling him what you're doing is lawless. What you're doing is violating the Constitution of the United States, a document to which you swore an oath, right? And so Josh Hawley is just this guy who loves the rule of law. This guy who pumped his fist, celebrating and encouraging insurrectionists who are attempting to overthrow the United States government. That guy. He's now asking the question, well, why are all these judges against Donald Trump? We need law in this country. The same guy who retreated, ran for his life, fleeing for his life during that very same insurrection is now asking the question about the rule of law, everybody. And he gets his ass handed to him by Kate Shaw in this moment. And then I've got another clip as a follow-up because it continued and it didn't get any better for little Josh Hawley.
And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this
concede
was
that as a
never
possibility.
used before?
Doesn't that seem like an easy answer to find, to come to that conclusion? Yes, it is record-setting right now what's taking place with courts ruling against Donald Trump. But it's not because of the courts. It's because of Donald Trump. It's because Donald Trump is acting historically lawless. As she says, he's engaged in much more lawlessness. And if you think this is bad, it actually got worse for little Josh Hawley. And it was at the behest of the big-brained expert, Professor Kate Shaw.
anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit
A
strange?
very plausible
good for the rule of
explanation,
law?
Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this
concede that
was
as a
never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator.
No,
and the 1960s is where some scholars sort of locate the beginning
Can you
of this.
identify
But
one
others,
before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first. There were others in the 20s.
The Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are
Is
no
that
meaningful
blind?
constraints on the president is a very dangerous system
That's
of law.
not what you thought when Joe Biden. That is not what you thought when
I
Joe
think
Biden was
every
president.
president
You
is
said that is
constrained
not what
and
you
must
said.
be.
You said it was
Absolutely.
a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law. You also said
Supreme
when
Court
Joe
Senator
Biden
agreed-
was president. Wait a minute,
agreed
wait a
9-0
minute.
with me on
you
that
also
case,
said
to
when
be
Joe
clear.
Biden was president, you said the idea that anyone would foreign shop to get a judge who would issue a nationwide injunction was just politicians, just judges looking like politicians in robes. Again, it threatened the underlying legal system. People were just trying to get the result they wanted. It was a travesty for the rule of law. But you're fine with all of that if it's getting the result that you want.
Sir, the Supreme Court agreed unanimously with me in that case, right? There was no standing. The case should never have been allowed to proceed.
Wait,
the combination of parties without standing and the single-judge division.
No. We're talking. No, they did not. They did not issue a ruling on the nationwide injunction. You criticized the injunction nationwide. Listen,
issued in a case
we
where
can go
no
round
one
and
had
round on this.
standing.
Here's the thing. We've now gone 6 minutes, and Senator Kennedy had you for 6 or 7.
How can anybody disagree with that? I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system of law. Maybe it needs to be repeated for the people in the back. If you're in the back and you're a little MAGA troll just quietly sitting, wondering what's happening, let me yell it. Now, people hate it when I yell. It doesn't stop me from yelling, but people hate it. I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on a president is a very dangerous system of law. We need a government, a set of rules. The Constitution does this. The burden is on the government. It constrains government. It curtails government from squandering its position and our rights, trampling upon our rights. And this is where the rubber really hits the road. In the differences between Joe Biden, for instance, and Donald Trump, is one sought to expand freedom and liberty and rights, and one looks to curtail it, to restrict our rights, violating the Constitution all along the way. That's the difference here. Is the burden is on the government. It's on Joe Biden. And Donald Trump doesn't want that burden of governance. He doesn't want the burden of adhering to the rule of law, adhering to the Constitution of the United States, a document, again, to which he swore an oath to support and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But I guess when you're that domestic threat to the Constitution, this is how it works. Let me tell you a little bit about Kate Shaw. This is from her page on the University of Pennsylvania. Again, an Ivy League law school here. Kate Shaw joined Penn Carey Law in January 2024, and where she was also the co-director of the Florsheim Center for Constitutional Democracy. She is an expert. Shaw is a constitutional law scholar who also taught courses in administrative law and legislation and a seminar on the Supreme Court. She was a visiting professor at Penn Carey Law during the spring of 2023, and her academic work focuses on executive power, the law of democracy, the Supreme Court, and reproductive rights and justice. She previously worked in the Obama White House counsel's office and served as a law clerk to U.S. Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens and the Honorable Richard Posner of the U.S. Court of Appeals of the 7th District. She's an expert. She's practiced her craft. She has honed her craft. She has expanded her knowledge. She's not a demagogue for a demagogue. She's not a cult member of the dear leader. And that is really where the problem lies relative to how Republicans view her. She has expertise. She's an intellectual. She's an academic. She's a woman. And she absolutely respects the Constitution and the rule of law. And that will not be had by fist-pumping Josh Hawley, insurrectionist Josh Hawley, fascist Josh Hawley. Anyway, what do you think? I would love to know. You can call, leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. I'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe. It is free. Click the subscribe button. Help this channel grow and become more difficult to mess with by the powers that be that are absolutely doing what we just talked about, curtailing rights, restricting rights, not expanding them. I'll see you next time. I love and appreciate you very much. Be genuine. Take care of one another.